اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. فاتحة. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا الأنبياء والمرسلين، سيدنا ونبينا أبي القاسم محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. أما بعد، فقد قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ذكر علي عبادة صلوات. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. Salamun alaikum ya Ali Madad. Today, as we all know, is the 8th of Shawwal. So first, I would like to send my condolences to Imam Zamana alayhi salam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. I would also like to send my condolences to all Azadar from all around the world, because today marks the destruction of jannatul Baqee. Today is a day filled with sorrow, because as I said, it marks the 100th year of the destruction of jannatul Baqee. I want to ask all the Muslim Ummah that if you love the Holy Prophet, why don't you raise your voice for the daughter of our Holy Prophet? Today marks the 100th year, so there are protests all around the world, and we demand the permission to rebuild Al-Baqee. My respected Azadar, it is extremely important to never and to not forget Al-Baqee in your dua. So today, I will give you a brief history introduction about jannatul Baqee, Islamically, and of course, I will explain what happened to jannatul Baqee. But before I begin, please recite aloud salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. We are here to remember the 8th of Shawwal, specifically April 1925. The day when the Saudi government destroyed the Islamic cemetery of Jannatul Baqee. That is why today I will discuss about the history, such as what eminent personalities are buried in Jannatul Baqee, and of course the extreme importance of this cemetery. And inshallah, we will record our protests, we will get our voices to be heard all over social media. With regards to the several images and the existence of many domes in the blessed cemetery of Baqee, some people will ask, when was this beautiful cemetery built? Well, up until 1925, you could go and visit the beautiful dome and the beautiful cemetery. They were visible and indeed visited by many of the pilgrims from all around the world. Historical narrations and records are fairly scarce. This means that we have a lot of historical narrations. They point to the development of the construction of the mausoleums, the shrines, and the domes on top of the prominent graves inside the gem cemetery of Baqee. Let me give you a couple of examples. For example, we know a scholar by the name of Abdul Jalil wrote in 556 after Hijrah. He says the dome of Imam Hassan is next to the place of burial of Abbas ibn Abdul Muttalib. And he said, and his grave and tomb were present at that time. Also, Ibn Jubair and Ibn Battuta have said that they were eyewitnesses accounts of the existence of the shrines and indeed its development in this blessed cemetery. But now, let me tell you what eminent personalities are buried in this famous and important cemetery, in the cemetery of Jannatul Baqee. As I said today, you will not find a single grave marked with the name to identify who is buried there and who is buried there. It is impossible for us to find that out. Of course, this was not the case when we go 100 years behind, because 100 years ago, these domes were visible and you could see who was buried at which place. And once again, it was visited by many, many pilgrims from all around the world. As you enter the cemetery, you will come across, here is some information that we still have and I will deliver to you. As you enter the cemetery, you come across the graves of Bani Hashim, where the family of our holy prophets are buried. Of course, you will find the 4 graves which are together mark the resting place. These 4 graves mark the resting place of the 4 holy imams of the Ahlul Bayt. Now you might be wondering, who are these 4 holy imams of the Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam, Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad, that are buried in jannatul Baqee? Well, one of them is Imam Hassan, then Imam Zainul Abidin, Imam Muhammad Baqir, and Imam Jafar Sadiq. And the most important and crucial information that we have is that Bibi's Fatima Zahra Salamullah alayha, Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad, is also buried in jannatul Baqee. Right in front of these graves, we find the uncle of our holy prophet. Now you might be wondering the name of the uncle of our holy prophet. Well, in front of the grave of our holy prophet, there in front of these graves, you will find the uncle of our holy prophet, which is Abbas ibn Abdul Muttalib. On the left side, I understand it might be hard to understand these, but I am trying my best to deliver directions. So on the left side, there is the grave of the mother of Imam Ali, Bibi Fatima bint Asad. If you keep walking continuously in the cemetery, on your right hand, after you pass the grave of our imams, as I mentioned, you will come across the grave of the brother of Mawla Ali, Hazrat Aqil. And then you will come across the grave of Bibi Zainab, and then Hazrat Abdullah. You will come across the grave of the husband of Bibi Zainab. Who is the husband of Bibi Zainab? Hazrat Abdullah. Now, as you continue walking towards the cemetery, you will come across the other infant son of our Prophet, Hazrat Ibrahim, who passed away in the year 10th after Hijrah. There is also the grave of Hazrat Ismail, who was the son of Hazrat Jafar. There is also the grave of Hazrat Muhammad Hanafiya, and our Prophet's famous companion, Hazrat Miqdad, is also buried in Jannatul Baqee. If you remember my previous lectures, we discussed who was Hazrat Miqdad, we discussed the status of Hazrat Miqdad, and we discussed who was Hazrat Miqdad, and we brought up the fact that he was a very eminent, important companion of our prophets. And there we go, Hazrat Miqdad, a very important companion of our holy prophet, is also buried in Jannatul Baqee. There is also the mother of Mawla Abbas, Bibi al-Banin. She is also buried in the cemetery of Baqee. And also, there are many companions, approximately 10,000 companions who are buried in Jannatul Baqee. And of course, those who came after these companions are also buried in Jannatul Baqee, in this holy cemetery. Many members of the Ahlul Bayt, as I mentioned since the beginning of this lecture, are also buried in Jannatul Baqee. The sons and the daughters of Ahlul Bayt are buried there. But once again, of course, their graves are not known. You will find that this cemetery is actually very rich in its history. The history of the cemetery is very rich. What does this mean? It means that when we read the history of Jannatul Baqee, you don't find one account, you find many hundreds, thousands of accounts of Jannatul Baqee to understand and to look at the history of Jannatul Baqee. And the meaning, especially those who are buried there. This means that you will find out that a lot of eminent personalities are buried in Jannatul Baqee. Yet we will ask the same question, but where are they buried inside of Jannatul Baqee? Once again, we do not know, because Jannatul Baqee was demolished. On top of that, as I mentioned beginning, we find the 4 glorious, ever-free, sinless Imam of the Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. These are the eminent personalities that are buried in Jannatul Baqee, and this is the history of Jannatul Baqee. Before we end this lecture, I will conclude everything I have recited today. Al-Baqee, also known as Jannatul Baqee, is the first and the oldest cemetery of Medina, where the 4 Shia Imam and many other noble ones among the Sahaba are buried. Some structures were built over the graves of these Imams, as well as other figures which were known as Baqee. These graves were destroyed by the Wahhabis in an incident called demolition of Al-Baqee, which is why we are here to protest to allow us to rebuild the cemetery of Baqee, because for us it is an extremely important, eminent cemetery, because there we find the 4 Imam of the Ahlul Bayt, 10,000 companions, and many other noble personalities. Al-Baqee is located near Masjid al-Nabi and is one of the places where Bibi Fatima salamullah alayha is also buried. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. Al-Baqee is among the holiest pilgrim destinations for Muslims, especially for the Shias. Some hadiths have been narrated from the Holy Prophet as well as Imams about the importance of this cemetery. The graves of our Imams and the tombs of our Imams and the shrines built upon them were demolished in the year 1806 by the first group of Wahhabis. But they were once again demolished by the order of Amir Muhammad, who was the ruler of Medina, by the order of his father Abdul Aziz al-Saud on the 8th of Shawwal, April 21st, 1926. My Azadar, this is an extremely important fact that we should protest, because we demand the Saudi government to give us permission to rebuild the cemetery of Al-Baqee. Al-Baqee, Al-Baqee, rebuild Al-Baqee. All Azadars together and loudly, Al-Baqee, Al-Baqee. We want permission to rebuild Al-Baqee. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. My Azadar, in this lecture tonight, we saw the importance of the cemetery of Baqee. We read its history, which is extremely rich. And then we discussed about the holy personalities and the noble companions that are buried in Jannatul Baqee. Tonight is an important day. Today is an important day. It marks the 100th year since Jannatul Baqee was destroyed. And as I said, we demand the Saudi government by protesting to allow us to rebuild Jannatul Baqee. Al-Baqee, Al-Baqee, rebuild Al-Baqee. Everyone together and loudly. Al-Baqee, Al-Baqee, rebuild Al-Baqee. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad. We have concluded tonight's lecture about Jannatul Baqee. If there are any more lectures or majlises coming in the future, we will inform all Azadars through announcements such as posters and flyers. Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ali Muhammad.